Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Off Air podcast here on the JP on Comms YouTube channel. Today, we are going to be doing our first monthly review of the season, taking a look at Maidstone United's return back to the National League South and what a first month it's been. There has been some ups and there has been some definite downs. It has been a very interesting journey so far, and joining me to talk about all of that is, of course, channel regulars Sean Skirt and Nigel Seeger. So, welcome, Sean.
Yeah.
And Nigel, welcome to yourself as well.
Hello.
So, of course, first things first, we're going to be talking about a few different topics in this video, and we're also going to be giving our player of the month as well at the end. So, what we're going to be talking about, first of all, is going to be the small matter of discipline. Now, of course, if you are an avid Maidstone United fan, you've been to some recent games, you'll know that Maidstone United have picked up a fair amount of cards in this early season period, and a few more serious than others. 2 red cards in the last 2 games, and coming from players who, of course, you wouldn't necessarily expect them from, and have put Maidstone in a bit of a tricky position in terms of maybe trying to cover those areas in upcoming weeks. Now, Sean, something I want to talk to you about is this discipline and how you think it is coming about. Do you think this is an issue which is something internal in the squad? Do you think it's maybe just an adjustment to the league? Do you think we're maybe a little bit too intense compared to, last season where maybe we went up to that standard? Now maybe we're trying too hard?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of a few of those things. Certainly the try hard, die hard situation seems to be affecting Maidstone. The exact stats, you mentioned the 2 red cards that Razak and Bivesh have got, both, as you say, unexpectedly from their position. Certainly Bivesh, the more stupid one, frankly. I don't think there's any way of sugarcoating it and not
Yeah.
trying to upset anyone, because putting a hand, flat palm or whatever in someone's face is a blatant red card, whatever people's opinions are on football. Razak, certainly I'd heard some people say it was 2-footed. Clearly only the 1 foot that went in. The contact, I mean, I don't think at this level anything like that's going to get overturned. So both of those red cards are absolute shoo-ins. It's 16 yellow cards in the 6 games as well. And as I mentioned on air on Monday with Darren, that was a 4th yellow card in 6 for Gavin Hoyt before he then come off with a knock, which obviously we'll discuss that at some other point. So yeah, I do think it is the trying too hard. And yeah, I know George has done a little bit with the KM saying it might be I'm too fired up. So I don't know whether he imbues that into his players potentially. I know we didn't have, I wouldn't say it's a new thing for Maidstone. I know our disciplinary record was pretty pants under Hakan as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure we probably had as many yellow cards as we did goals conceded last season overall, to be fair, which is, when you think how many that was, you think, well, that's quite a few, isn't it? But when you aggregate that out,
Yeah.
that's only 2
Getting a few a game, yeah.
and we're closer to 3 at the start. So yeah, in terms of, trying to think of circumstances around it and going, well, the pitches haven't been too wet, they've not been sliding in for too many challenges. A lot of the stuff, I mean, early on, you'd probably, if we had a proper analysis of the entire league and other leagues in general, you'd probably see that a lot of sides have got more yellow cards than they would have done by this stage last season at the end of August, purely because of the prerogative of the referees,
Yeah, I
PGF,
was going to speak on that.
and all that. That's why they're doing these things. And so many of them have been, you're there watching a match, commentating on it, or watching it, and so many of these yellow cards have totted up. You'd probably be half this level potentially last season, but there's so many. When you see the club tweets coming through going, oh, he's been booked for, unsporting behaviour, for doing this, for doing that. And there's so many little niggly tiny things and the chatting back. Then at the end of the day, it's all stuff we've wanted to see for years and years and years for them to enforce, because everybody moans about the moaning on the TV and it filtering down. So all the time that all these yellow cards are coming out, eventually, you never know, all the boys and girls playing might learn a lesson, might shut their mouth and actually get on with the thing that people are paying to watch them do, to kick it and not mouth it. So I'm all for it, and I think it's across the board. But certainly, yeah, Maidstone certainly seem to be trend setting quite high up in the National League South from the numbers that I've seen. And yeah, something they really need to work on. Maybe it is George firing a bit too much into them. It's I mean, that's his job at the end of the day to try and
Mhm.
deflect some of that away from the players. So very interesting KM interview. I'm sure there's more of it we'll be getting on to as the piece goes on this evening. But yeah, too many yellow cards, too many red cards, to be fair. And these things obviously slide into other issues that we have.
Yeah, for certain. Obviously, Sean mentioned there that, you know, we have now got players who aren't going to be there for the next few games. Bivesh playing a very important role in a defensive midfield position for a lot at the start of this season. Bear in mind, the only other player we've got who does play there is Sam Bone. Obviously, had a bit of a injury scare, I think you could call it, in the last game against. I can't remember who it was now. Oh my god,
Taunton.
that's the one, Taunton. Yeah, of course. Slipped my mind. But yeah, and you know, you don't want to run that risk of, if he does need that opportunity to rest or work something out of his system in terms of a knock or an injury, you don't want to have to throw him back in. That's why you have players like Bivish in the squad, and getting silly cars, like you said, Sean. You know, even the yellows, they're going to tot up. Gavin Hoyt's now one away from a suspension. So that could be a problem, you know, not having your captain on the pitch. And we don't have any other right backs at the club. Obviously, George Fowler can play there, but then we lose a centre back, which means Sam Bone has to fill in, but he can't fill in because he's playing defensive midfield. So it's a very, very slippery slope, and it's not something we want to get into and continue on for the rest of the season. Nigel, obviously looking at the discipline and how that's going to affect Maidstone in the short term, but also the long term once these cards start totting up. Do you feel like that could be a big reason behind why Maidstone are starting to maybe lose out on these leads? Obviously, now we're 3-1 all draws in a row, 3 times, I believe, where we've taken the lead and lost out. So that's, you know, potentially, however you want to look at it, 6 points dropped. So you'd like to think that Maidstone would be able to hold on to those leads. Obviously, we were so good at the latter stages of games last time in National League South. Do you think that concern for cards, or already seeing the red cards in the last 2 games, were influential factors in dropping those points?
I don't know really. I think it's it's a concentration thing. I think really. I mean, Taunton, the home game against Taunton was the classic point, wasn't it? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they felt aggrieved that the red card was given, but you've got to switch on. You can't be doing what we did. You know, all right. And George alluded to it in his interview. If you lose that first phase, that first contact with that ball that comes into the box, you've got to be ready to win that second phase. You can't just, you know, whose fault was it? The defender or Collins coming out? It doesn't really matter. As a team, as a collective, you've got to know if you lose out on that ball, you've got to be alert and ready to defend the next phase. And we just weren't. We just weren't switched on. You know, at Hemel, it was 1-1 when Bivish got his red card. I think it kind of galvanised the team because we did say on commentary that, you know, literally 5 or 10 minutes, had a good 5 or 10 minute spell, Hemel, before they did score. Again, I know it was from a corner. They played a corner routine, and again, you've got to be switched on. But after that red card, I think they did come together as a collective, and you know, I don't think right there the Hemel's manager's sort of analysis of the game. I don't think Hemel really looked like scoring, and in fact, we could have nicked it at the end. So, you know, I just think we just need to. Maybe it is George just being a bit, you know, too tough on them, but you know, and you see it, don't you? Anyway, a lot of the times when they have these new rules bringing, you get a lot of early doors in the first cards in the early first 6 weeks of the season, and then you know once players learn to adjust to it, I remember a few years ago when they brought the back pass rule in. How many yellow cards and that for goalkeepers did we have? They were who's going to pick the ball up, who's going to play the ball, you know, but. You learn to deal with it and adjust with it, and you know, you're already seeing now the time coming down. So it's just a concentration thing, really. I mean, you just got to be switched on, you know, because games nowadays are, you know, not just the 90, are they?
Mm-hmm.
It's 90 plus 10 in some cases. So, you know, it's just a case of being switched on and being professional and picking up your men and, you know, doing what you train to do all week. And that's, you know, the out games of football.
Yeah, I think looking at how obviously the rules have changed a little bit and how the structure of games has developed already in this first part of the season, I think you are right in that it could definitely be a concentration thing because you're going to be hardwired as a footballer who's been so used to playing just 90 minutes plus probably max five across both halves over the last few years of your career. You're going to be hardwired to start coming down at a certain point, aren't you? And once it gets into the much latter stage of the game, if you're having plus 6 or 7 the first half, plus 6 or 7 the second half, and then additional time added on during added time for whatever might happen in that, you're going to be playing an extra 15 minutes a week really, and that's going to have a burden on you. That's going to make you kind of switch off a little bit quicker, in my opinion. So I do agree with that. I do think that the cards and stuff is a contributor, but I tend to agree really with what you're saying, Nigel, in that I don't think it was the deciding factor. And Sean, how do you feel about all of that?
I was just going to add that statistically, I always like a little stat bomb. I mentioned on air that it was the 29 points that Maidstone dropped last season from winning positions, which in itself is indicative of how poor the season was. Bearing in mind, we've already mentioned that Maidstone have dropped 6 this season, all in the last 3 games from those winning positions. The fun side of the stat would be the season 2 years ago, where we won National League South. We dropped a grand total of 4 points from winning positions. Once we were winning, we stayed there and we did not about. We got stuff done in that particular season. So
there's a flip side to that, Sean. Do you know how many points we got from losing positions that we came back and won in that season?
Yes, on the flip side of that, indeed, we gained 16 from losing positions. Sorry, that's yes, that is, yeah, those 21-22. Sorry, I've got the 21-22 stats on the 22-23 spreadsheet.
We didn't even get 16 points, did we? Last season?
No, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're already about a third of the way to last season, aren't we? So we're hopefully not going to outdover ourselves at any point. Yeah, certainly this season, I know we've been behind twice and we've won one, lost one. So we've not been behind too often in matches, to be fair. But we've already gained 3 points from losing positions already. So I know we've dropped the 6, but we have gained 3 from the Slough game. So yeah, there's a bit of everything in these stats, as I keep saying. You can make them work however you want to, but the key one for me is we dropped 4 all season from winning positions when we won the league. So anybody who's still optimistic of us being in the top 1 come the end of April, you got to look at starts like that we've
not at this rate.
No, exactly. But again, if we'd have taken those 6 other points, we'd have eclipsed. We would be on 15 rather than 9. We'd have eclipsed that start. And then you're saying, yeah, we've not dropped any points in winning positions. We've stayed there. We've stuck at it. So it's these fine margins. It's only the switching off of the red card for in the Taunton game, and the other 2 matches is just, again, set pieces is the vulnerability. Another thing that has been spoken about in the KM article that Craig Tucker's done with George. And it's all stuff we've spoken about these last few weeks. And seeing George's interview after the Taunton match, he was pissed. And that's probably the most pissed I've actually seen him coming out doing a post-match interview in his 8-month tenure with Maidstone. And it was quite refreshing to see, because rather than the smiley, big name ex-Premier League player pleasing everybody, it was nice to see him being pissed off at what had happened out there, because there's only so much sugarcoating you can do. Maidstone are really close to where they need to be. Again, we've all been saying that all month on commentaries, but it's good to know that he's going to whip them up the right amount, because as he's already said, he doesn't want to put too much into it and blow things out of proportion and keep a bad run going. So I know we'll get to a bit more about George later, but the Ella Kobe project, as Darren has called it, will hopefully reap some rewards. And if it's not promotion this season, it's certainly going to be better than we had last season, and hopefully somewhere close to what we had 2 years ago.
I think that's the hope that a lot of people have at the moment. I think we realise that we're not right at the top at this moment in time. I think a lot of people are quite, quite concerned but I don't think that's necessarily, anything to worry about. If you look at the other two kind of favourites for the title before the season started, Torquay and Yeovil, both dropped some really, really silly points already in this campaign. A little bit higher up than us as it stands, but at the end of the day, we weren't expected to be winning the league outright. So I'm quite happy with the start we've had. I think the signs are there to build on that and improve. And I think with the set pieces you mentioned, Sean, that was something I was going to bring up because I've actually got the article in front of me, and I think we've been a little bit more productive from them. We've obviously got a couple goals already. First game against Slough, we got a goal, and then against Yeovil as well with Levi, got a goal in that one as well. But we are conceding a hell of a lot of goals from set pieces already, and that was a big thing for me last season. I won't jump on you with a stat, but if you can come up with it, that'd be much appreciated.
Well, I can tell you this season it's 3 in, 3 out. We've conceded 3 and scored 3, and obviously we could have had a fourth, but we've had a penalty saved.
Yeah.
But in terms of set piece goals last season, we scored 14, conceded 21. And yeah, I haven't got too much of a breakdown in terms of how they went in. I've got 8 free kicks and 8 corners, but it's then knowing what those corners,
of course,
get things like headers or rebounds and things like that. But certainly, when you consider we conceded 104 goals and a fifth of them come from set pieces, it does also make you wonder how often we get broken down in open play as well, when you think about it that way. So it's only a fifth of them last season when we conceded so many, but when we've conceded the 8 that we have and 3 of them are set pieces, that's closer to 50%. It's about 40% we've conceded. So it's twice as many, and if you have that over a season, then I mean we might not concede as many, but certainly proportion wise, you'll know
of weakness.
There is an issue. Exactly. Yeah. George in the article does say, I don't think we're vulnerable. But it's like, you're not vulnerable, but at the same time, it's something they're looking at.
It's not a strong point.
Exactly. And the more often it happens, the more you're able to say, oh, there's going to be a space there. That one's not picking up 6, etc. And everybody has the same video replays. I know George said in the article that he's obviously going to aid his players with the video replays and make them better for the information they've got from cameras on both sides of the pitch. But yeah, I still think that Weymouth, very big pitch, very cavernous stadium. I'd be surprised if we didn't concede a set piece goal at the weekend. I know you and Darren are going to be there for us on Stones Live. It's such a big pitch. If we do concede a set piece goal, I'd be unsurprised for a stadium and a pitch that big. So I'm sure it was at least 2 probably the last time we went there pre-COVID. So now we conceded 5 the last time we went there, as I'm sure you know in your prep notes that you'll have ahead of Saturday. I'm sure not to
try and pressure me to get some notes down, but
and missed 2 penalties.
Tomorrow's job.
Missed 2 penalties as well. Yes, so in terms of set piece conversion,
Lewington saved 2 penalties, didn't he?
Oh, sorry. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's certainly conceding of set pieces as well as conceding from set pieces.
Yeah, you don't want to give any more of those away. Yeah, definitely. Happy memories indeed. Now, one more thing we're going to be taking a look at is quite a, for me, big concern. I think it's probably the most prevalent concern that I've got. Nothing really I've seen too much this season has worried me a great deal. I do think there's a bit of a work in progress going on at the team, and we'll grow into that as the season goes on. But for me, take a look at the squad. Obviously, we've gone with more quality over quantity. That was made quite clear towards the start of pre-season and things like that. So we do have a much smaller squad than we've had in recent years, and we are now starting to see a few of these players are starting to pick up knocks and injuries, and we're seeing a few players who, especially last season, saw quite a bit of time out already. Gavin Hoyt going to be out for a good couple of weeks, most likely. You've got Reece Greenwich. If he's having to go for a scan and we've still not heard anything, you can make the assumption that could be something a little bit longer term, potentially even recurring. You don't really know. And then, of course, Sam Bone and Sam Corn, did have spells last season, especially Sam Corn, where he had a very long period out of injury. And having these players become injured again could be quite concerning for us. And I just want to ask yourself, Nigel, would you think that maybe we have made a bit of a mistake going with quality over quantity, or keeping on some players who could potentially be a little bit more prone to these sort of knocks?
I don't know really. I think it was always from the outset to have a small working squad to
Mhm.
keep the closeness in it. But I know from speaking to a couple of the people in and around the club that they are still open to the loan market,
Mhm.
um, which I wouldn't be opposed to. I know we said in our group chat, we are with Enzo on the left back and Gavin Hoyt as a right back. We haven't really got cover there. I know Rafe Brown can cover, but he's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, isn't he? Really, not disrespecting him, but he's what is his best position?
Yeah,
I
he's
think
not
he's
like an
probably
out and out right back or an
yeah,
out. Yeah.
yeah. So and he's kind of covering that centre back position as well, which
Mhm.
Bone is currently sitting back into. I think probably the thinking behind that was that we could always use George Fowler as a right back, but we've said on here before, that's I think his best position is in centre back. I don't think you need that partnership. Obviously, the Greenwich injury after before the Oval game, that's kept him out for the last 3 games. Would it have been different with him in the side? Who knows?
Mhm.
He's certainly a big presence back there when those balls do come in the box. So, you know, yeah, I think I think they're going to be looking down that route, whether that's get a right back in or get a centre back in. I don't know. Maybe they could go back to Cambridge and see what Job's doing. I've not seen him go anywhere.
Yeah, he's certainly a player I wouldn't be against picking up. I was quite disappointed that we couldn't manage to sort anything permanent, whether we pursued it or not. But he's certainly a player that I thought impressed last season at a much higher level as well. So I think he'd do really well. Obviously, got experience in the south already. I think with St Albans on loan there before. So yeah, certainly a decent enough option should we choose to go back into somewhere like that. But I do think that what you said there, obviously having Rafe at the back, I think he's a fantastic utility player. Like you say, he can play in any position across that back four, but it seems that he is our only backup for every position in the back four.
Exactly that. Yeah.
And that's not sustainable. It really
No.
isn't sustainable. And as I said earlier, looking at the suspensions, if Gavin Hoyt then gets a match ban or a 3-match ban for a red or something like that.
But when for the
But yeah, he will pick up another yellow card, probably against Weymouth. So
no offense to Gavin,
Well,
but
he's injured now, so I'll give
yeah,
him
exactly.
but
yeah,
he's got that.
but
But at the same time, if you've got 40 matches to avoid one yellow card, pick up 4 and 6.
yeah.
It doesn't take a mathematician to work out.
But yeah, so when Gavin's going to face suspensions throughout the season, obviously during this period where he's facing an injury as well, having to move your centre back, who is now our main centre back, because of course Bones dropped back in, George Fowler to right back, as Nigel said there, it's really going to start to mess up the unit that we've tried to create early on in the season. And I do think it is going to cause us problems. I do think we are going to have to try and search out some replacements, whether it's short term, whether we get someone in for a month, 3 months, 6 months, something like that, just to try and provide a good bit of cover at the back. I think that would do us in good stead. So yeah, that's obviously our assessment of the team so far. But there's one more thing I want to touch on before we do wrap things up, and that is, of course, the manager. George Edakobe is someone who has faced a lot of criticism, obviously, towards the end of last season, started this season as well, with pre-season, things like that. Very, very heavily scrutinised. Obviously, hadn't really succeeded, I suppose you could say, last season, but I think there was certainly some external circumstances which contributed to that. The fact he was left up the creek without a paddle was one of them. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit, about George's development throughout the season. What sort of things we as a group have seen from him transition throughout this opening period of the season, ranging right back to the start of pre-season. Is there anything that you guys think we've seen, that you wouldn't have expected from him maybe a couple months ago that we're seeing from him now? Sean, is there anything that you feel that we've seen develop over time from George?
I mean, certainly I've expected his man management side, because him as a person is a great guy. Um, really communicative with his players, wears his heart on his sleeve. Um, I've been a little surprised at his flexibility tactically, because I know we were all a bit worried after the Slough game and that last 20 minutes, we all thought shutting up shop, only going to concede, only going to win out by one and not go and attack. To be fair, he has changed things up these last few games, and it has been predominantly the 4-3-3, which we have all been used to last several years, pretty much ever since Hakan got the reins, and then started properly on his own at the start of 21-22. And it's the formation we've been used to. It's a formation that's used throughout a lot of the higher leagues, and there's a lot of flexibility in it. But I was very intrigued at times on Saturday, again, how far forward the fullbacks got, because it essentially become two at the back. It was almost a 2-5-3 at times. So I mentioned on air about how pre-season is still going on for Maidstone and for George, because when you think about it, if he's sometimes playing almost a 2-5-3, and I'm not saying that backwards, then you know that he's flexible, and blessed are the flexible. He's able to change these things up as much as he wants. And we saw, the wing forwards changing sides, and within 5-10 minutes that produced a goal. So he's not afraid to change up the system, and certainly there's a lot of messages that need to go out to the players. So whether there's some confusion in some of the messaging because there's too much to go out to them potentially, who knows? But yeah, there's a lot that I've seen that's encouraged me, but certainly some pitfalls in what he's been trying to do and trying to encourage people to do, because there is a lot of work and a lot of learning for all the players to do. But certainly encouraging signs, despite the statistics, which never bode well. It does in the last almost 20 years worth of statistics I've got. I think he's even worse than 40 for his brief tenure in 2010-11. At the moment, he's still got the same wins as Lewis and Walton did for that for that month-long stint the start of 2019, and they obviously played 21 matches less, not to try and deflate anyone at all. And again, you can make the statistics do what you want them to do, but no, George has a lot of potential in him as a manager, and the larger than life character that he is. And yeah, a lot of positives, few things that are letting him down that we're seeing out in the performances. So it's potentially there are a lot of ideas in there. Sometimes it might be that too many are trying to come out at once. So there needs to be a plan A and a plan B, but it might be that we're getting down to F, G, and H, and you're thinking, whoa, just, in the mixer, Bosh, just don't fanny about.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can try too hard. Obviously, that's been mentioned in the interview. Sometimes he gets very invested. Sometimes he gets a little bit too fired up. Maybe he's too hard on trying to change the game. He's trying a little bit too much, which could be causing a few issues here and there. But of course, it's certainly a tactical development we're seeing over time. I feel. I think we're seeing a bit more consistency in what we're expecting from him as well as a manager, rather than just hoping that he can pull something out of the bag. I feel it's a lot more reliable now. Nigel, how do you feel about George's development over the last couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see what he's trying to do. I mean, you can see it within games as well. That the formation that he's playing, he's trying to get sort of like. I was kind of looking at it at Hemel on Saturday. He's trying to get that. So when we attack, we are that 4-3-3, or whether the left back's going forward, the right back's or slots in. But then at times as well, we do drop back into that five at the back. It's just about getting that fitness, I think, and I think he's very much a modern manager in the fact that he looks at the data. I mean, looking at the game on Monday, the Taunton game. When Sam Corn went off injured, I was worried really. I think bringing on who did he bring on first? Connor Kelly on first, didn't he? And obviously Bivish is going to be out for, we know now, for 3 games, so that was his last game. But we kind of lost our flow, and I was wondering whether he would maybe have brought Rafe on at that point and move Bone back into the midfield to give us that little bit more protection there, sort of a ball winning midfielder. But you know, and then he's taken Levi off, and he's not brought Lamar on. Obviously, he's looking at all the sort of like the data and kind of managing them. I don't think anyone's up to full speed yet, so it will be interesting to see how he sort of manages that once we sort of get up to full speed. You know, once we get into these matches in September, and obviously we're going to have the FA Cup coming up now. So you know, we're going to, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have that that tie. That if you get a run in that can build momentum as well. So you know, he's got to sort of go to that next step, I think, now, and sort of start winning these matches, and you know, to really sort of, because it's easy putting things into practice in a winning team, isn't it? If you're having to constantly chop and change things and you're losing, you're not getting no consistency. You know, the best way to get consistency is win matches. So,
yeah, I think that's going to give that confidence in the team as well. You know, where I said, I think it was maybe a video that I put out on the channel after the Bath game that, you know, I feel that we went into that one lining up how we finished the Slough game. And I think in a player's mind, having that subliminally there, that we didn't really perform too great when we did this last time out. Now we're expected to go and do it for a full game.
I think,
off
sorry
the
to
bat.
interrupt you, Joe. So I think that sort of happens in the away games as well. I mean, I think we set up against Taunton at home how we set up for the 4 away games. So, you know, making that switch. I mean, we were so dominant in that first half. We needed that second goal, and I think if we'd got the second, we'd have probably got the third. But where you're sort of like still in that mindset of setting up, keeping your shape, and, you know, in a defensive mode, we didn't kick on. I mean, there's a couple of times when a player would come in on the right or the left, and it was there, get them out and put a cross in, but they sort of check themselves and sideways pass or turn and put one back. Well, you know, that's fair enough when you're away from home, but when you're at home, you've got to put these oppositions to the sword. I don't think we've got that spark, that flip to sort of really go for it. But you know, hopefully it will come. Today with fitness and with results, I think it'll be good. But
the irony being there, Nigel, is that it was Razak who did him and Sol change wings. It was Razak who cut in and had a couple of moments there, and him and Amanci linking up. We saw it like in pre-season, and now obviously Razak will have one last chance briefly at Weymouth.
Yeah, to be fair, I thought he had a good game on Saturday, on Monday, but he was just, you know, he got that red card. Now he's going to sort of be out for a few games again. He's going to sort of blunt that sort of progression that he was getting game on game, which only comes with consistency. So again, that goes back to your disciplinary, doesn't it? You're getting up to match fitness, and then you go and miss 3 games. You'll almost come back to square one again. So, you know, it's something that does need to be addressed.
I wanted to ask you, Joe, as well. Sorry if you have another point there, but obviously we saw you on Tuesday night at the under-23s with your dulcet tones on air for Stones TV, which is great to have you there. Was there genuinely anyone that caught your eye and thought, well, they could take Bivesh or Razak's place for something, you know, Worthing onwards, Weymouth onwards potentially?
Well, there's a couple players in there which I think are on that kind of subliminals. Obviously, we saw in pre-season that there's a couple of the 23s who are kind of knocking on the door, and I interviewed Riley Court after the game, obviously mainly playing in that kind of central midfield position, a little bit more of a box-to-box, more attacking type player, so not quite what we'd expect from Bivesh. But I think he's relatively close. It wouldn't surprise me to see him feature in and around the squad in coming weeks. And obviously for me, one of the big things was, obviously this is not what you were hinting at, but Sol Wanjo-Smith, you know, he was featuring in that 23s game, has been out of the side for a couple of weeks now. You know, a lot of people have had concerns. Is it injury based? Is it something else that's going on to kind of be playing with the 23s? But I don't think there's anything potentially too negative behind it. Obviously, we've seen Perry and Rafe both featuring in it as well, and no one's got any concerns over why they're not featuring the side. So I think Sol will probably make a return too as well. But there's a few players in that squad who are certainly in the ballpark, and I think if a little bit later on down the line, if we maybe didn't enter the loan market, there is a couple players who in the defensive positions, Tyler Hatton, I think it is, played in a more left-sided role. That could be an opportunity for him to try and find a way into the side, maybe in a slightly different role than what we saw in pre-season. But, there's some bright players in there, and I think that we are kind of going along that right track. Obviously, Elokobi's shown that interest of starting to try and bring these players through. Worked well with him in terms of bringing Nathan Jeke on towards the tail end of last season, and that's obviously caught quite a lot of eyes. So, yeah, I think that it's certainly an outlet which we could use. I don't think we'll rely upon it, but I think we will test the waters every now and then throughout the course of the season.
Yeah. I was also going to mention, obviously, I had the fortune to speak to Sylvander Smith because he was up at that gantry, as you've probably all seen from the hot take as well, and heard the interview on Stones Love at half time. One thing you should do is always do your research before you speak to someone, because it was genuinely in a position of, I do not know why you are up here and not in the squad. Are you injured? Have you been dropped? Is there something wrong, etc.? And because we don't have much time when we change things around with our ad breaks, half time, etc., it was just a case of sod it, get on, have a chat. And everybody afterwards went, why was he up there? Why didn't you ask him? And you go, it's the one thing you don't ask someone live on air. Why aren't you playing? Because that goes awful. So
it's just headset off.
Exactly.
Off they go. Just
Christ, off I go. Yeah, I didn't fancy that with him at that point, because it was such a good time and a lot of great analysis and getting inside, the dressing room and things like that. It was a great interview with him. So I just didn't think to spoil it. I didn't do any foot in mouth that I'm aware of relative to what I normally do anyway. So for those people who have been asking me privately and online, that's the reason why I didn't ask him and I didn't bring it up, because genuinely didn't know. It's not usually the sort of thing you ask live on air. In a pre-record maybe, but not live.
Yeah, I suppose that could have taken a different turn if that avenue was to be explored. So we've taken a look at everything we wanted to in this month. The last thing we're going to do is try and allocate a player of the month. Now, it's going to be what we usually see, I'm sure, if you're familiar with the channel. Usually, Sean and Nigel will find some form of agreement. I'll be outlandish in something stupid that I say. And then there's other times where we're all completely worlds apart, but we all try our best to make our decisions justified. Now, I'm going to kick things off. And for me, my player of the month is going to be Levi Amanchi. Now, I think that he has proven quite a lot of people wrong. I think that there's obviously going to be some doubters still there, a few which I've kind of had back and forth with online about his performances and things like that. But I think if you've been to every game so far this season, as I have, and no disrespect to people that haven't, but you have got to see a full 90 sometimes to fully grasp the contribution that people have. The highlights aren't going to include everything. I think, every time we go forward when Levi Manchi's on the pitch, I feel like something could happen. I feel like he's got a lot of different avenues that he can really let go in a game. He's obviously got that height, won so many headers in games this season. I was told actually at the under-23s game that last season, when we were in the National League, Levi Manchi won the most headers in the National League South, National League North, and National League combined. So that's one of the reasons why we obviously took a shine to him. And bear in mind, he did not feature 90 minutes every week last season, and he still came out on top. So very, very good statistic there. I think he's got fantastic feet as well. I really like the way he works the ball. He's got some really good pace, which actually I didn't realise he had before we signed him. And I think he's just a very, very good all-round player. And he's already bagged himself a couple goals. Has, of course, not started many games this season, but he's now starting to get into it. Obviously saw his first 90 on Saturday. I assume the reason he come off a bit early on Monday was because of that. And I think he's only going to grow into what could be a really fantastic player for us. And I think he's doing a very stellar job so far. So, Sean, who's your player of the month for August going to be?
Cracking stat with the headers there, Grant, as well, by the way. And to add a little bit more flesh to the bones on that. Looking at the front six that we've got in the squad, I believe Levi is top three, third out of the six in terms of minutes played. He has indeed only started 3 of the 6. His first and only 90 minutes was indeed on Saturday. Liam Sol's got the most minutes, then Lamar, and then Levi in that front 6. So that's another thing to discuss, is that clearly there isn't a consistent starting front 3, which is obviously another issue with George not potentially knowing his best side. Even then, we've only had 2 people play every single minute, Covolan and Fowler, which neatly brings me to my player of the month. For me, Covolan, player of the month. I mean, all of last season, I was trumpeting whoever the number 1 goalkeeper was going to be for Maidstone United and say they would probably end up being the player of the season if they played often enough. So for me, Covolan's obviously played every minute. He's kept us in a few games. And I reckon he's probably won us more points than a Manchi has statistically, if you think
probably
about saves. Because I was toying with Levi Amanchi as my number 1 as well. Pick, not goalkeeper.
Yeah.
You could...
Oh, he's got the height on his side, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, Covolan player of the month for me. He's kept us in certain games, won us more points than Amanchi's 2 goals have. And a special shout out for Sam Corn as well. He probably would have been 3rd place for me behind Amanchi, because I mean the man's just been running and running. He's basically been the Forrest Gump of the side in his first month. I've just not seen him ruddy stop. So thank you, Mr. Corn. Your work is appreciated and done for this month. So yeah, Corn 3rd, Levi 2nd, Lucas, mad Brazilian bugger in between the sticks. My number 1 for the month.
Number 1 in net, number 1 in player of the month. And Nigel, who are you going to agree with? Are you going to agree with either of us, or are you going to go astray and lead us in a different direction?
Well, you've mentioned all the names that I was thinking of.
Good.
I agree with Sean. I think Sam Corner's had a really good. I mean, he got his goal at Braintree, didn't he? And
absolute belter.
He did have a good game there, and I think it was notable when he went off on Monday against Taunton.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as he went off, the game changed completely. We just lost all control in that midfield. So proves what a big player he is for us. I am impressed with Covolan as well. You know, he's positioning and that save at Yeovil. Whoa, Jesus. That's
honestly, right. The highlight reaction to that.
I was listening to the Yeovil podcast that you went on pre-game, Joe, and they was talking post-match about that. And they was talking about that as being one of the best saves they've all seen live at Hewish Park. You know, that's that. You know, considering they've come down from the Championship, and you know, that just goes to prove, you know, that none of them could really think of a better save, a better time than that save. So, you know, considering it was just before half time,
and yet he's still going to pick Amanchi at the moment from the tone, isn't it? He's still going to pick Amanchi, and he's just come out.
No. You know, obviously you've got to pick someone, haven't you? But they're all, but I'm going to pick Amanchi just because of that total game, and it sums up literally what Manchi's all about. He came on. The first action that he had was defending a corner, hit a corner away. You know, then 2 minutes later he's at the other end of the pitch scoring a goal after he's only just come on the pitch. You know, that's got, you know, and it was a point I was going to make about, as well, about the, you know, the substitutions and that, and the time this year. You've got to have players that are going to come off the bench and be ready to go. Because it's not just like you can come on and, you know, just have 5 minutes of the game, you know, just see the game out. You know, a lot of the time these players are coming on now and they've got a good 15, 20 minutes to make an impact. So you've got to be ready to come on and make a difference. And I think he was, you know, wasn't easy that time. He had a flick on there from Lamar and it wasn't, it was straight in front of goal, but he could have easily snatched at it and missed it, you know, kind of thing. But he took it well, and he scored a good goal against Taunton as well on Monday. You know, like you say, I think he's deceptive with his pace. You know, I think he
doesn't look like he's going until he's beaten.
But he's got such good body strength. No one gets around him. You know, he uses his body strength to hold players up. And although we lost 3-0 at Bath, I was commentating on that game, and No word of a lie. I think he was the best player on the pitch from both sides. He had no support up with him, but we were saying on commentary with Piers, he must have won 90% of his headers.
What a game, honestly. After that game,
He's lucky with Covenant. Covenant has got a big kick on him. And if he's winning 90% of those hits, if we can just get closer to him, we are going to create so many opportunities, And they weren't, he was just causing teams so much trouble. And again, he went off on Monday, probably just to manage his minutes because he's obviously played a full 90 at Hemel on Saturday. But, we just didn't look like scoring. And with him on the pitch, it always looked like you're either going to score or create a chance, because defenders just panic. So we win a lot more corners when he's on the pitch. We win a lot more free kicks when he's on the pitch. And he just gives us a chance to implement our dead ball routine and get balls in the box. So, I just think the all-round player of him is, he's that proper or striker number 9 player that we've been wanting. And I think if we can, build on that, get his fitness up so that he's, contributing, playing a full 90 minutes as with the rest of the squad and get a formation in place that we can support him, I think we're going to have some player on our hands. I think,
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him struggle at all much this season. I think even in the games, like you say, Nigel, where he's ushered out because of the team being pinned back and not being as effective, he himself as an individual can still have a very, very good performance. And I think that's going to benefit us.
Look at Hemel on Saturday. We was down to 10 men. He had the best chance. We got a ball in the box, fell to him, very similar to his Taunton goal. He took it well, turned on it, and just the fact that they had like a wall of red on the line.
Stuff, yeah.
Another day that gets deflection, it's in the goal, and it's winner. Thank you very much. So, yeah.
So, I think by split decision, unfortunately for Sean, impact player and star striker of this new Maidstone United team, Levi Manchi, is going to go down as player of the month, with honourable mention to Lucas Coverland for Sean and Sam Bone as well. So that is going to wrap up everything from us today. Thank you all so very much for joining us back here on the Off Air podcast for the first roundup of the season. We'll be back in a month's time to talk all about September. Fingers crossed, Maidstone are going to start climbing a few more places up that National League South table, and we're going to have a lot more to shout about next time round. So thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.